Hello, my apologies for a long absence. I know it's been a long time. I apologize. Uh, Let me just say really quickly, this will be the last time that I make an apology for that, because I know how it is. You know, you watch somebody's videos on YouTube, they've been doing it for a while, and you kind of catch up after they've made a million. And at the beginning of every video, they keep apologizing. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. So I'm not gonna do that. I'll just do that this one time because it has been a while. Really quickly, the reason is I went back to school, and so it's been much more busy than it's usually been. It's really hard to make videos. So, but anyway, I'm not dead. Every single one of my projects, the chess, the Fist of the North Star, everything is still rolling on. It's just coming at a slower pace. So, um, anyway, let's go on to today's topic. I wanted to talk about something it's kind of been on my mind for a long time, and it's something that it's kind of connected to things that I've been talking about before in other videos, and what it basically is I want to talk about Japan and in relation to the idea of soullessness. Now, you know, it's really hard to begin. Well, let me like preview just by saying some like small stories, experiences I've had that just really turn my perceptions of my fellow human beings just on its ear. So, I've talked about some of these before. The first and probably the biggest experience I talked about in my video called "Most Heartbreaking Moment in Japan." But there were a lot of other times where I saw just Japanese people act in ways, and I could only describe it as like cold, heartless, emotionless. I remember my first week that I was teaching. I met this older guy, and he was comically negative. You couldn't buy a smile from this guy. He was just this older guy, and he would come into class and he would like just sit there, arms folded, kind of looking at you, and no matter what you tried with this guy, like pleasantries, they did not work with this guy. And it was almost, it makes me look back and smile because it was funny. Like, I'd never seen a guy just be so negative for no reason. You never just like walk into a room and look at a person and try to be friendly and say, "Hey, how's it going? How's your day?" Something like that. And just to see a person kind of look back at you and say, "It was fine." Like, I don't know why he was so sad like that, but he always had this funny negative attitude. I remember just no matter what you said, he would always give you the most, bare bones, just driest answer. And I'm thinking like, God, living with this guy must like being in the Sahara. I remember one time like he came in, it was his birthday, and I remember talking to him about his birthday, and it was like almost like asking him about like contracting athlete's foot or something like that. Like he was so unenthusiastic, and just his talking about it made me laugh. I was like, can you get to a point in your life where you're so like embittered or you're so negative that not even your own birthday can bring a smile to your face? Anyway, that guy I met, just as I said, very, very early on. At the time, I thought that was really funny, but let me explain some things later. So during this talk, I'm going to give a couple of little Japanese lessons just to fully explain what I'm talking about, and I wanted to demonstrate how it's not just individual here and there. It really is cultural. So there's a concept in Japanese. There are these two words that go together, and they are tatemae and they are honne. Tatemae, the two kanji that go together, literally mean stand in front. So what it basically means is the words that you say when you're standing in front of someone is tatemae. Somebody, your friend is wearing a new hat or a new shirt, and you think it looks ugly, but they ask you and you say, "Oh, that's great, great new shirt," Or the most common example is, every single Japanese TV show, almost every channel will have some sort of like cooking show, and no matter what they eat, they'll always eat it, and they'll say, "Mmm, delicious," you know. And sometimes the food looks actually really weird, and it looks like it doesn't taste delicious, but that's tatemae. That's what you say when you're standing in front of someone. Honne, literally, I think, hon means like actual or true. Ne, I think it means meaning. So basically, what it is tatemae is what you say in front of someone. Honne is what you really mean. An example of this, I remember my sister-in-law. She was dating this guy, now her husband, at the time her boyfriend, and she went to the boyfriend's house, and her mom was really strong, and the mom was really like domineering, like whatever happens in the house, like it happens because of her say so, and she didn't like my sister-in-law at the time, and when my sister-in-law came there, she had that very typical, like, it's a very typical tatemae honne face that Japanese make. It's like you come in the room and they're like, there's a very wide-eyed look, and they're not gonna say, like, get the hell out of my house, She actually said, irashai. She actually said, oh, welcome to my house. And then within like 5 minutes, she had pulled her son aside and said, get that girl out of my house. Like that's tatemae honne. Now, even though I'm saying, these concepts, and even though it is in Japanese language, it's not, of course, it's not just unique to Japanese people. Everybody's like that. Like, no matter what culture it is, there's going to be, people who, say what they mean and people who don't say what they mean. It's not just unique to them, but I guess it's just like the level to which it happens in Japan. That's just what makes it kind of unbelievable. And I personally just found it very frustrating. One of the reasons that I do these blogs is because I just want to say what I really feel about stuff, without fear of, PC police, like, jumping on my back and telling me that I can't say things, or without people, or at least to say what I really want to say and give people the chance to see both sides of it. Like, a lot of times you'll just say one thing, and then a person will just judge you on that one little thing, and you can't even get the words out of your mouth because they're telling you, oh, you can't say that, or, you shouldn't be saying that. So, it really bothers me, and it's always bothered me how hard it is just in the world to say what it is you really mean, to say how you really feel. I don't think it should be that hard, is basically what I'm saying, but it is. And in Japan, it was doubly or triply so. So let's just go back to like Japanese language itself. And I can say, just without any fear of contradiction, it's cultural. Like the idea of saying what you don't mean just to get along socially, that's woven even into Japanese language. Even if you know the basics of Japanese language, you'll know there's, honorific Japanese, there's humbling to express yourself, and there's like a base, kind of middling language that just people use on a daily basis to communicate. So, let me give you just one more free Japanese lesson as I describe one sentence that I heard in a Japanese department store one day. So I was just shopping there by myself, and this woman's voice comes over the PA and does a little spiel, and it begins with the sentence, "Okyakusama, go raiten itadaki, makoto ni arigatou gozaimashita." So first of all, the meaning of this is something like, honored patrons, thank you deeply for coming to our store. Okay, that's the basic meaning. But for those of you who speak Japanese, you'll know that literally every word in that sentence, every single word is honorific. Okay, so the first word, the base is kyaku, meaning customer. When you put an O in front of it, it makes it even more formal. Then sama. Usually people would just say, like, san, like Tanaka-san or Daniel-san. But no, it's sama, which is even more formal. Then goraiten, which uses the two kanji meaning come and store. Okay, instead of the usual sentence structure like mise ni kuru, the kanji are put together, which is formal. And when you put the word go in front of it, just like o, it becomes more formal. Then, itaraki. Instead of the usual kureru, like kite kureru, itaraki is a more formal way of saying it. Then, makoto ni arigatou gozaimashita. Okay, basic knowledge of Japanese tells us that arigato means thank you. Then, arigatou gozaimashita, thank you for what you have done. Then you add makoto ni, meaning true or truly. Again, even though we have the conversational honto ni, we use makoto ni, which makes it even more formal. All of which means, thank you truly for what you have done. When what you have done is simply to come into the store. Now, all of that, all of those levels of formality in one sentence, right, which takes me about, 3 or 4 minutes to fully explain what everything means, just so you can hear a woman read that off a list in a voice that's like hearing a professor talk about different polymer plastics. Like, it's done technically well. I'm sure a professor knows everything he's talking about, but you don't care about it, Because the person, at no point does that person convince me that they mean what they're saying. And that was the part that just killed me about all of this. Like, for me, I felt like Japanese were much, much more interested in following the rules than actually trying to be good. And it was so hard to explain to them, like, it's possible to follow the rules and be a bad person. And a lot of them were just like, I don't get that. If you follow the rules, you're good. And I'm like, no, it's possible to follow rules. It's possible to have bad rules, What does it matter if a person is reading, thank you very much for all that you have done, if they don't mean a word of that? That used to make me really mad because I felt like people were using formality in the same way that lawyers, use words to kind of protect themselves. They're not saying it because they mean it. They're saying it because they want to cover their ass, whether legally or financially or something like that. They're not doing it for you, They're doing it to kind of protect themselves. They're doing it, so they can make money. So that was the part that really killed me about it, and that was the part that I feel like it leads to a lot of this pressure, a lot of this kind of built up frustration, on the part of the Japanese, because I don't feel like a lot of them know how to get out of that. I feel like a lot of them need signposts. They don't know how to do things on their own. They don't know how to feel an emotion on their own unless there's a rule which tells them how to feel the emotion. And then they'll follow the rule. And, okay, I'm supposed to smile. And, okay, I smiled. Check. Check that off the list. And it's like, you can't have all of that explained to you. At some point, what you actually feel needs to take over. And that was the part that I could just never kind of communicate to them, except through teaching lessons, except for actually being in a classroom with them. That's when I could actually reach some people. But on the street, in a department store, it's like most of them would just be scared to talk to a foreigner, So, anyway, I want to move on to the person that I really want to talk about, the person that this video is basically all about. So there's a woman, this student that I used to teach, and in my mind, I think of her as the soulless woman. Now, I've really got to describe what I mean when I call her that, because it's kind of hard to relate it exactly. I don't think that she's like soulless. How do I say this? I mostly call her that because of the feeling that she gives me, like when I'm around her and I see her react to the world. Okay, so this is what the deal was with her. Her actual English ability was surprisingly high. Like her English was so functionally good that no matter what, like she knew everything that I was saying. And in fact, there were some times when I would try to outrun her linguistically. I would try to, say things like, if you're an English teacher for a long time, you end up speaking really slow, because if you really want to communicate with all types of, English learners, there's going to be a lot who just, simple sentences, they're going to have to stop and figure out what you said. So there's a tendency to speak really slowly and clearly and do you understand? And then you put this kind of like, linguistic spring in your step and you don't care about the speed, you just keep on saying it. It doesn't really matter if they get it or not, you just keep on saying it. And when I try to do things like that, with this woman, she was right there. I didn't lose her at all. She was very, very functionally good. But the real fun came, the real point at which she just stopped and didn't know what to do, it came exactly at the moment when you ask her the simple question, how do you feel about that? When you ask her, how do you feel like that? How do you feel about that? It was like talking to a Vulcan. It's like she just didn't know what to say. She didn't know what to feel. And this is what I think. This is what I honestly think about it. She didn't know what to say until you told her how she was supposed to feel. So you'd have a conversation like this. Like you're talking about a current event, or like something in society, like we would talk about like maid cafes, right? And she could explain where they are, she could explain what they are, she could explain everything, right? And conversation goes perfectly up until the moment you ask, how do you feel about that? How do you feel about maid cafes, right? And like clockwork, she'd pause, she'd think for a second, and then she'd ask you, how do you feel about it? And whatever your opinion was, that became her opinion. It cracked me up. Like it was funny in a way, but it was also kind of scary. It's like she was that prototypical personality of a person who becomes like a cult member or something like that. Like she was so easily and clearly manipulatable, whatever that is. It's easy to manipulate this woman. You could get her to do anything, like sometimes I would play games with her. Like, I would take a topic and I would just bat it back and forth just so I could see her reaction, just so I could see how she'd react to it. So one time we were talking about abortion, and that's obviously strong feelings on both sides, right? And so like I would get her into a conversation and I tried to pull out her feeling, like how do you feel about that? She's like, well, how do you feel about that? And so I would just play games. Like first I'd take pro-abortion, and I'd be like, well, a woman should really decide what to do with her own body. And she was like, yes, that's right. Abortion is okay. And then I'd say, well, actually though, I don't care what anybody says. I think that when life begins, that's a life. You should take that very seriously. And she's like, yes, you should take it seriously. Abortion is bad. And it's like, regardless of my personal feelings, I wanted to know, like, how she would feel. And I would do that a couple of times, like, just to see. And like clockwork, it's whatever you felt, that's how she felt in response to it. And it was funny. I was like thinking, maybe I can get like some credit card numbers from her or something. But anyway, this is around the time that my son was born. And I remember I was showing her pictures, of like when he was born, when he was first born. And her reaction to it, it was like showing the pictures to a robot that was programmed to show emotions, It's, it's like she knew what she was supposed to say, you know? It's like she knew, like, from the outside what she was supposed to do. Oh, when somebody shows you a picture of a baby, you know, rule 1 says pick up the picture. Rule 2 says smile at the picture. Rule 3 says say it's cute. And, you know, she followed all those steps. But it's like, at no point did I think that she really meant it, or at no point did I think that, you know, her real feelings were coming out, you know? It was funny. It was like, oh, cute. You know, like, and like, you know, I'm his father, and, you know, a father's going to be very biased, but even I would say that it wasn't a cute picture, you know, like, it was just a firstborn picture. But, you know, I think I need to be clear in all this. Like, I don't think that she's a bad person. I don't think that she's like an evil person. And I don't even think that she's like a completely cold, heartless robot. You know, I just think that she's a person who's very awkward and very clumsy with her own emotions. Like, she just doesn't know how to use them, or she doesn't know how to express them. Maybe I should say, you know, like, you know, what I really think is, I don't think anybody stops feeling emotions. You know, no matter how much they try to hide them, no matter, you know, how clumsy they become with them, I don't think it's really possible to stop feeling something until your heart stops beating. You know, and that goes for like hardened criminals, like people that you think, oh, they're heartless. You know, like maybe yeah, like they don't know what to do with their emotions, but it doesn't mean that nobody feels anything. You know, so like this woman, even though I'm calling her the soulless woman, it's not totally true. It's a misnomer. You know, it's just how I felt about a person who was so clumsy with their emotions. And I think that that's what happens when you're living in a society that doesn't really allow you to show your emotions. You know, it really doesn't encourage you to sit down and think about how you feel about things, because there's always a rule to follow, right? No matter what you actually feel, there's a rule about how you're kind of supposed to feel and how you're supposed to react. And in this situation, you say this, and in that situation, you say that. And they will look much, much more to, you know, following those rules than they will to just sitting back and thinking, how do I honestly feel about this? You know? And so for somebody like her, I don't feel like she's bad or anything. I feel like in a way she's kind of trapped. And I feel like in a way a lot of Japanese are trapped by those like unbelievably detailed, strict rules, you know, that they have to follow, because if you don't follow them, it doesn't really matter what you feel. You know, you can be ostracized like that if you break a rule. And that's not something that anybody really wants to deal with. I felt like, you know, genuine emotions, they just get you punished. You know, you just get punished for doing and saying the things that you really mean, you know? I dare anybody, you know, to go on one of those cooking shows, eat the food, and then say, ugh, this tastes like crap, you know? It'll be instantly, oh, okay, bye-bye. You're never going to come back to the show again, you know? I remember, like, I said this before, but, you know, in the 5 years I lived in Japan, there were 6 prime ministers, because nobody wanted to be in the spotlight. And that's not just politics, that's anything. That's anything in Japan. Nobody really wants to be in the spotlight, because the spotlight itself is the punishment, you know? And the one that I saw, the one prime minister who seemed to want it, was a guy named Naoto Kan. Every other prime minister around him, like Hatoyama and you know, Fukuda and some of these guys, they just seemed like, you know, the day it was announced they won, you know, the candidacy for prime minister, they just all had this kind of like crestfallen, like, you know, like they didn't say it, but they didn't really seem, you know, happy about it. Fukuda, on the other hand, he, he really seemed genuinely like, yeah, I want to do this. I want to make a difference. I guess like he was an activist. He was like a political activist. Before he was a strict politician, and so he was used to that kind of upbeat, let's change the world kind of attitude, right? But it wasn't too long until he got to be in that position, and then suddenly it's like, every time a dog gets stepped on, in Japan, it's your fault. You know, anytime somebody burns their dinner, it's your fault. No matter what problem happens, it's your fault because you're there. And people are going to fight against you no matter what you do. So he was the prime minister when the big disaster happened in 2011. And I honestly think he was trying his best. Like it's an unbelievable situation for any person to be a leader and try and deal with. I don't think that he was doing anything wrong or bad. But it's like that kind of disaster happens and people are going to complain no matter what. Emotions are running high. I recall, I didn't really watch a lot of political TV, but one thing I did see was I recall there were these people who were in Fukushima, and I think that like emergency rescue vehicles were like late, not days late, but obviously there's a tsunami, there's an earthquake, there's this nuclear meltdown. It's like all these disasters in one day, one time. And there's finite resources, right? Well, of course, some political opponent, they're going to start using that as, they're going to start trying to use that disaster to make political hay. They're going to use that disaster to say, "Oh, look it, there weren't rescue rescue personnel in this place at this time. What explains that?" And they were like yelling at Naoto Kan like it was all personally his fault. Like he wasn't trying his best to actually stop things, Like he was just sitting on a pile of money, like eating steak and lobster and just, having fun, It's like, no, like the guy is actually trying. You have to understand it's a complex problem, But as I said, it just, no matter who you are, it just seems like no matter what you do, you're going to get punished. And if you stand up in the spotlight, you're going to get punished. And if you don't follow the rules that you're supposed to follow, you're going to get punished. And if you tell somebody how you really feel, you're going to get punished, And it just feels like most people learn to stop showing how they really feel about things, because it's just going to get you punished. Every time you poke your head out of that rabbit hole, there's going to be somebody with scissors trying to cut your head off. And so eventually they're just not going to try so hard to show you what they really feel, If I'm just going to get, hell every single time I try to show how I really feel, then they're just going to stay where they're at, So I don't know. It's one of those things that's just, it's so hard to communicate to them the right way. Like I don't hate your culture. I don't honestly think that you're, like heartless people. I just think that you have to find a way outside of doing things that you're supposed to do. It's like, oh no. That's not what you were supposed to say. What you were supposed to say was X, Y, and Z. It's like, well, what if I want to say ZYX? Why can't I try it? No. The rule is XYZ. So, anyway, the last thing I wanted to say, I've talked about fighting in my other videos. I've talked about, the Japanese tendency to, at all costs, avoid risks. And it really just seems like, the 5 years I spent there, every day was this uphill fight. Japanese people, they fight in an extremely static way. Whenever one person gets the advantage, they sit on it. And they say, I don't have to come to you, you have to come to me. You know? So whenever it came time for any kind of risk, like meeting or talking to someone new, I could guarantee that the onus is always, going to be on me, the onus to break the ice, the onus to take any risk, to be creative. It's all going to be on me because they're not going to do it. The only way I've ever managed to kind of break out of that is to not make it a fight. Like, just think of it as best as possible as just making friends. But, when you look like this and, you're a big guy and you're a big foreign guy, that's just a risk that most Japanese aren't willing to take. So, the funny thing, that guy I talked about before, that sad sax guy, the guy I met when I first came to Japan, at the end of my time there in Japan, I became that guy. I mean, don't get me wrong, like, if it's my birthday, I could, like, squeeze out a real genuine smile, but, I think that I saw, why he was the way he was. And I think I understood a little bit what it means to kind of, be disillusioned with something. And I think I understand why he takes a generally negative approach to his fellow man. I don't think it's a good thing, but I understood why he did it. It's like, it's really hard not to get frustrated, because it's frustrating knowing that people around you, like, they don't mean what they say. They're always going to judge you based on your appearance and not based on how you actually are. And just seeing them always do, like, the bare minimum, basically just following the rules when it comes to actual human kindness. I have to say, honestly speaking, it did make me sad. It did make me disappointed. But what I think is this, like, being disappointed, it happens. And being frustrated, it happens. But I'm so much happier that I can actually talk about it and, like, actually say it is what it is, Honestly, I think that woman I'm talking about, the soulless woman, she's going to get to a point in her life where, I think she was a little bit older than me. I think maybe she was about, I'm 35 now, I think she was about maybe 4 or 5 years older than me. She's about 40 right now, and it's like, what if she gets to that point where she can't even say honestly that she's disappointed, or that she's frustrated, or that she feels something that makes her mad? You know what I mean? Like, I feel like she's just going to keep on looking at the rule book, and the rule book is going to tell her, oh, do this, and do this, and do this. There's nothing in the rule book about actual disappointment. There's nothing in the rule book about bad feelings that humans feel that they shouldn't feel, but they do, So I feel like I can at least talk about it honestly, and I can get it out. Whereas that kind of person and, like, that kind of society, there's not really any acceptable way to say, I hate everything around me. Like, I hate the fact that it's all like that. That pisses me off to my very core. There's nothing in the rule book about that. One of these days, she just might, I don't know. I know I end a lot of my videos by saying I don't know. But, there were some people that I met who were there who were actually very emotional. Those few people that I met, and one of them is my sister-in-law. Those are the ones who kind of got me by in that time, you know, because it's not to say that all Japanese are like that, but honestly speaking, culturally, it very much is. Anyway, there's a lot more to say, but I'll leave it there for now. So, any questions, any comments, I'd be happy to hear anything you have to say. 見てくれてありがとうございました。さよなら。What?